I want to tell you a story about a company that lost $125,000 betting on Harry Potter because something with Harry Potter went totally wrong. And surprisingly, this story will actually help us understand what's going on with businesses and individuals in the pandemic today. Hi, I'm Craig, and welcome to Market Power, where we believe in the power of markets and economics to shape our world. So go ahead and subscribe if you're interested in joining this community of people interested in and excited about economics. Now, if it hasn't been obvious yet, I am going to be going into some spoilers for Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, but you know, it is 2020. If you have not read Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, you probably don't care about spoilers at this point, but you have been warned, because put yourself back in 2007 as we're getting ready for Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows to emerge. In fact, you have to go even further back to 2005 when Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince ends. And the question on everybody's mind is Harry Potter a Horcrux? And if he's a Horcrux, does that mean he has to die in Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows for Voldemort to be defeated? These are the questions we were grappling with back in 2005, 2006, 2007, the kind of thing that's on everybody's mind. Well, somebody decided to set up a betting market on this. They wanted to know, is Harry Potter gonna survive? Will he die in Deathly Hallows? And a fairly big betting market sprung up. There were 4,000 people who placed bets on the outcome of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Now, you might already be thinking like you understand the story of where this is going because you've read Deathly Hallows and you know what's gonna happen with this bet, but let me promise you, there are twists and turns along the way, more twisty than the end of a Harry Potter novel. So stick with me through this because this story just makes me giddy. I tweeted about this a couple weeks ago when I found it. I was doing research for the Trump betting market video and I came across this story and I said, I have to do a video dedicated to this story, and it just made me giddy. So stick with me. You don't know the ending to this, trust me. First, to truly understand why this bet becomes so complicated, we have to understand the economics of bets. A bet is just a contract on future outcomes. What you're trying to do is outline what the future looks like and what your outcome is going to be like in every state of the world. To show you what I mean, let's go back to Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire and meet Ludo Bagman for the first time, who immediately introduces betting. Let's go to the general case where people are trying to bet on who's gonna win, Bulgaria or Ireland. Well, that's basically determining a fork. And you're saying there are two different outcomes. In one outcome, Ireland wins, and the other outcome, Bulgaria wins. And you've covered all possible paths for that match. Now, Fred and George go into this really unique bet where they say, we're betting on a world where Ireland wins, but Crumb is the one to catch the snitch. So they're going further down that path, really trying to say, if this is the world we end up in, then we get money, and in every other world, we lose money. Bets are just contracts that determine the allocation of resources in the different states of the world. And to see that they're like contracts, let's just quickly think of a housing contract. A housing contract is me saying, in this state of the world where I pay monthly rent, I get to have a room. And in the state of the world where I don't pay rent, I don't get the room. And kind of like Fred and George, you could go further. You could say, well, if I don't pay rent this month, then there's a state of the world where maybe I'm paying a fine, or maybe they're going to arbitration. I maybe don't get immediately evicted, but there's a whole set of clauses that dictate what that world looks like when you don't pay. Now, that's not everything you need to know about bets for you to understand the story. I'm gonna explain the rest in a minute, but I want to start the story so that way you can see where we're going and see if you can kind of anticipate what to expect from this bet. So like I say, we're in 2005, we've just finished Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, we're trying to find out what's going on, and in 2006, a betting market begins. Now, there are actually a couple separate betting markets, and this point is actually important because there was one betting market that said, will Harry Potter survive the Deathly Hallows? And another one that said, will Harry Potter die in the Deathly Hallows? And the funny part was, for both of these markets, bets were on yes to both of these questions. Yes, Harry Potter will die. Yes, Harry Potter will survive, right? which seems contradictory, except for the fact that that is indeed what happens. Let's focus on the will Harry Potter survive contract first, then we'll get back to the will Harry Potter die contract, because this one starts getting these heated debates in the weeks ahead of the book, because an announcement came out that Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows would have an epilogue. And that is a key trigger for a lot of people thinking, oh, maybe he will survive, but what if at the end of that epilogue, he is dead? What if it says he dies a happy man of old age, whatever the case is, he's dead at the end of the epilogue? What does that mean for does he survive? He survived the main plot, and then it fast forward in life and he dies. Who gets the payout if he actually is dead in the epilogue? And that is a really important part of setting up these contracts. You're trying to determine all the states of the world, and people start debating over the states of the world. So this actually throws this huge wrench into the betting market, and people are trying to figure that out. That is not what leads to the $125,000 loss. The loss is over in will Harry Potter die? Because people were betting so much that he would die, another market opened up that said, who would kill Harry Potter? While you might know the answer to who killed Harry, you might not understand in the betting market who killed Harry. And this is really important to that last piece of these bets I need to point out. When you make a bet, you're trying to outline future possibilities and the resources people are gonna get under those different possibilities. But what happens when a possibility arises that you did not plan for? Let's go back to that Quidditch example. You have Bulgaria wins, you have Ireland wins. But what if that match is canceled? What if there's a world where the Death Eaters strike before the match and the Quidditch World Cup is canceled? What if a pandemic happened in the Harry Potter world and they had to cancel all sports? If people were making bets on that match, now all of a sudden there's this new outcome that no one had placed money on. Who gets those resources in that world? This is called an incomplete contract, when a contract is unable to cover all possible outcomes of the future and becomes this point of contention on who gets what resources in that future state of the world. Now, this is not a trivial question. This is what I say, this is helping us understand what happens in pandemics, because you had housing contracts that said, if I pay rent, I get to stay in this house. If I don't pay rent, I have to get kicked out. But what about the case for many students and people around the world where a pandemic happens? In the case for students were being sent home. The university said, you cannot stay here, you need to go home. In fact, before everything shut down and I was talking to my students about this, the first question I got was, if we get kicked out of our rooms, will we get a refund on our rent? That was not specified in their contract. There was no clause in their contract that said, if there's a pandemic, this is what will happen with your rent. And so they were confused. They didn't know what was gonna happen. This was a big shock to them. And so there becomes this contention, this fight. How do we resolve that? And that incurs economic costs. These are transaction costs on trying to resolve these incomplete contracts. Incomplete contracts end up having a huge ramification in lots of economics. It determines how firms are formed. It determines how people enter into economic agreements. It determines who you're going to enter into economic agreements with. Huge, important topic. And it's an incomplete contract that comes in and bites this betting company when Harry Potter is released. Because not only had they made the bet that Harry Potter would die, and he does, but then he comes back, so there's some kind of like an incomplete contract there, like, oh, well, did he really die? Did he not? What's going on there? But they also made this market about who would kill Harry Potter. And the top 4 contenders there were Voldemort, Snape, Ron, and Harry himself. And as you get into the book and you read it, you say, well, yeah, clearly Voldemort killed him. But on the other hand, Voldemort could only kill him if Harry submitted himself there, right? Like, Harry essentially takes his own life by coming into the Forbidden Forest and presenting himself before Voldemort. So we have this world that was not planned for in this original contract. There was a clear case where Voldemort kills him. There's a clear case where Harry kills himself. What about this world where Voldemort kills him, but only because Harry was willing to submit himself to be killed? Isn't he taking his own life? Who wins in that case? The resolution was this betting company had to pay everybody. They paid everyone who bet on Harry dying. They paid everyone who bet on Voldemort killing him, and everyone who bet on Harry taking his own life. And in the betting world, when you have to pay out on different outcomes like that, you end up losing a lot of money. But these incomplete contracts have a big ramification in economics, as I said. I even talked about one in my newsletter last week. So if you're interested in my newsletter, go ahead and look in the description below and you can find the link for that. And also, go ahead and check out some of these other videos. I'd love to do more videos like this where I talk about pop culture and how economics kind of comes in and affects things. So if you're interested in those videos, check out what's over here on this side and subscribe. We will see you in the next one.